Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. Why do some people stretch every day and still feel stiff and tight? Whether you're an adult or a cheerleader, why do people try to stretch every day and you still feel tight? In this episode, I'm going to share some tidbits and some information about from some different podcasts that I've been listening to lately and from other materials that I've learned through the years. I've recently been listening to Gray Cook and Lee Burton on the Movement podcast, Mike Boyle, where I get my strength and conditioning certification from, and Gary Ward and Monica Volkmar. I listened to a great podcast. Gary Ward is the founder of Anatomy in Motion, and Monica has been her own podcast out now. I'm going to link all three of those podcasts and put them in the show notes so that you can listen to them. They all had a similar theme, and it's how it's really shaped me and how I give my clients exercise. So they all come from a little bit different backgrounds. Gray and Lee are the founders of the functional movement system, which I did my research on in relationship to cheerleaders. And Mike Boyle's a strength coach, he's a functional strength coach, wrote a couple of books and has really pioneered bringing back functional training and not just isolated muscle training and looking at how we can incorporate that together. And then Gary Ward is the founder of Anatomy in Motion, and he has really broken down gait and looks at how each joint as we walk connects big toe up to the head. And so they all have different backgrounds, but they all are looking at a piece of the same puzzle. How are we going to move better? How are we going to control that movement? And then how can we train so that we are building function out of that? The body needs movement options, it needs movement quality, and it needs movement capacity. Most people skip and go straight to number 3, and they try for movement capacity. So they try to lift as heavy as they can, build the strength, work really hard, and go right into their tumbling routines, but they're missing out on that actual movement quality and the movement options to be able to move better. We're going to go right through them as we move along here. So before you actually work on strength, you need to make sure that your body can access the movement that you're asking it to do. So if you're going to, as an exercise, do a squat, do you actually have the mobility in your ankles, your knees, your hips? Do you have the core strength? And do you have the upper back mobility to be able to effectively squat? We need to look at body as a system. It's not just in one piece. It's not just a squat. And a squat is a very complex pattern. But if you are an adult and you're getting up from a chair, or you're a cheerleader going to base flyer, you need to be able to squat. If you're a flyer, you need to be able to squat to be able to get in and do that position. Doesn't mean that's what you need to train for. We need to work the body as a system, recognize that it's all connected. I literally just filmed a reel that talks about needing mobility, stability, strength, nutrition, hydration, rest, and mindset. And there's more. None of those can function without the others. We need all of them. But where do you start with, and how do you make an improvement? Whether you have back pain and that's stopping you from running up and down from the toilet, or you are trying to link skills together and get better form with your tumbling. The same overall reaching thought has to happen. We need to have the movement quality. We need to know, do we have the motion to be able to do what we're asking it to do? And then how do we put those pieces back in? And do we just train? If you can't do a squat, are we just going to load up a squat? No, we want to regress that and that's that up so that we are training in their ability, and we train that capacity down lower, and then add that motion that's missing back in, and then keep building from there. Once we have that mobility, we need to work on the stability that they can control their joints. And then we need to work on the strength and building on it. This can vary day to day. Your clients and your athletes, they need to just keep checking in with themselves every day, because they might be sitting in a car for a longer period of time than normal, or maybe they are running more than normal, and then they go to do whatever activity you're looking to do, and for that day, it's just a little off. So knowing where you're at each day can be very helpful. having a global screen, if you're a coach or parent listening to me, knowing where the starting point is and will help to guide you to what they need to do. And then that gives you something to check back on to make sure are they actually progressing. When an athlete has knee pain, they might have difficulty in landing and maybe they have some balance issues, so they can't stand on one foot. If they had that knee pain, everyone's going to go look at the knee. But the problem actually might be coming from the foot, the ankle, or the hip. If you're an adult with back pain, you might have some hip stiffness that goes with it. But everyone's going to go and stretch the painful area and that. So stretching the lower back, but it might not actually be the lower back that needs to get looser. The lower back might actually need to get stronger. I just taught a class today actually called neurokinetic therapy, and we're teaching other practitioners how to muscle test to be able to see where the actual pain is coming from, to be able to find out where the restrictions are. Most of the time, the pain in the back is not because of the back. It might be because the back of the hip is tight and the front of the hip is weak, or it could be vice versa. So having a system in place to find that and seeing, can we create that movement in the body and reintroducing that is going to be how we are going to program to get you feeling better. So we question, what movement have you lost? What movement is missing? What have I lost? Instead of asking, what do I need to strengthen? What mobility can I not do? Instead of, how can I get this stronger? Sometimes it is a strength factor. If you have full motion, if you can raise your leg up to 90 degrees with good form and a straight knee and the other leg stays straight, you don't need to stretch your hamstrings, but you might need to have more core control, or you might need back control. And so looking to see, okay, the missing motion is me touching my toes, but I can raise my legs straight up. So I don't need to touch my back and strengthening my hamstrings and doing deadlifting necessarily. I need to work on that flexion moment to be able to get better strength in my core. And we need to be able to create that movement in that. Having motion and controlling motion are not the same thing. We want to make sure that we have the actual available joint motion. Can the hip fully extend as we're walking? Does it actually push off? Or are we getting hip extension, but our knee is bending? That could contribute to knee pain when you're walking. At full push off, you have to extend through your big toe, you have to extend through your knee, and you have to extend through your hip. And if your knee wants to flex even just that little bit, then you might be missing a little bit of that motion. So we want to reintroduce that. Once we have that movement back in and we give you a system of how to create movement, then we can look at how do we control that motion. So it doesn't mean you're loading up and adding. You can use weight instability exercises, but you're going to look at where the compensations are, where the asymmetries are, where the control is. We want to work on getting those to be more symmetrical and less compensating and creating better overall control. My favorite screens to see is, does somebody actually have the control and the mobility? I already talked about the toe touch, which is bending forward to touch your toes. I also like leaning backwards. So we go forward and backwards to see, is it a front problem or a back problem? I like squatting and then single leg balance and standing on one leg. That is a key one. They've taught that in almost every course I've taken. Can you actually stand on one leg and stack up so that your pelvis is level, stands right over your knee and right over your ankle? If you can't, and if you're really dumping into your hip, then there might be something going on down the chain at your ankle or your knee, or it could be your core control. So we put all these pieces together and then determine what is missing from that. And that tells us what we need to add back in. In a mobility wise, I'm going to look at, can the person move their pelvis forward, move their pelvis back, move the pelvis up and down and side to side, and can they rotate with the pelvis? I'm going to maybe look at the ribs as well. If I'm looking at a lower body, I'm probably going to go starting with the pelvis because that's the mimic what happens at the foot. And then I see, okay, is it even? Does it hurt? Which way feels easier? Do you need to actually work on, if you're missing lumbar, you can't get your back to flex and go into a posterior tilt, you might need to work on that. But it doesn't mean you bend forward and touch your toes and just keep stretching that way. It might mean you have to lay on the ground and create the control on the ground, making sure you're not overusing other muscles and you're using the right muscles and around your pelvis and just getting the joints to move. Instead of thinking this heavy muscle contraction. How can I make my joints move a little easier? And are we going to be able to do that with control? If a cheerleader can technically perform a skill, but rely on the compensation, so they're up in a lib and their hip is hiking up and they're leaning over, are holding their breath, or they're shrugging through their shoulders, they don't really have control of that. They technically can do it because they can stand on one leg, but they don't have that balance and control to hold and keep everything steady. As an adult, let's say they can touch their toes, but maybe their back is bending too much or too little. If they extend through their back and they don't push their hips back, then they have a straight lower back and a flat back. They're not really getting that full lumbar flexion that we want to see as you come forward. So looking to see what is missing for them. They can get their hands to the floor, but if their back is flat, it's not coming equally shared between the back and the hamstrings and the back of the legs, but it's probably coming out into that hyperextension into the back. So instead of just asking, can you do it? The key thing is, how are you doing it? Are you able to do it correctly with good form? Does it look good, or does it look scary and sketch? And does it hurt? They're not just looking at, yes, I can get my hands to the floor, but how is the quality of that movement? Then once we have quality movement, we've got the actual mobility we want to build in and around. So now we know we have the joints that can move, but we want to create that stability in and around, and then create some movement patterns that start lower level, that are easier, that mimic the same pattern, but are easier for them to do. We can build that up progressively and take you from lying down to kneeling, to half kneeling, to standing, and building on your strength from there. So let's say we've worked on that and we have a routine now. This potentially could become the warm up, or it could become in between strength exercises, because no one wants to stay on the ground and work on rolling all the time. I get that. Or breathing. I do a lot of breathing with people because I find the diaphragm tends to be overworking for the rest of the core, maybe the rest of the body. So we train a lot of breathing to get the diaphragm to move more efficiently. And then we create some mobility in the back and some stability in through the core. And then we move on from that. Sometimes it takes some time to actually get the feel for it. People, you've been dealing with back pain for a long time, or you're dealing with a compensation that's happened from when you were 10 and now you're 18. There's a long time of compensation in there. It's going to take a little time for that pattern to break, or it might take a long time for you to learn how to get that control with emotion. Or it might be something you have to kind of nudge and gradually work on your motion so that you can then build it into your workout routine. So try not to get impatient when we give you exercise or when you're trying to progress. Take the time and then find some ways you're going to incorporate this stuff as your warm up or in between sets to get into your strength work. Maybe we're not working on a two-legged squat, but we're going to work on a single leg squat. And so our goal is to get rid of knee pain. It may be a matter of we're going to single leg deadlift and do some single leg squats. Again, if it doesn't hurt, and they have that range of motion and control. And we're going to look at training movements, not just muscles. So a lot of times everyone says, oh, I got to get my quads stronger. I got to get my core stronger. Why? In what way? How are you going to know it's stronger? What are you able to do? We're going to look at those functional patterns like squatting and not necessarily doing two-legged stuff. One big example that Mike Boyle and Anthony Renner were talking about in their podcast, it's a strength and conditioning podcast. And Ant was interviewing Mike. And they really talked about, should adults really be doing two-legged squats or deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts with a stiff leg? I'm not 100% sold on Mike's perspective, but I do see the point in it for back squatting. Putting a bar on your back, going from sit to stand and doing that motion loads up your back. If you've got, whether you have back pain or knee pain, we're putting load onto something that you're not moving well, or as an adult, our hip flexors are tight. I just sat in a car for 2 hours coming back from the course. My hips are tight. I'm not ready to go put more weight on my back and then try and squat. That's a recipe for disaster. I'm probably going to end up with back pain if I do that. But I could go into a goblet squat, put a little bit more weight into the front of my body. It's harder to control. I have to engage more core with that. And if I do my warm-up routine and I get my hips loosened up, so I've got full hip extension, and I can work the control of making sure my pelvis is moving in the right position and I have gained my core stability, then I can go and load it and do it in a goblet position. Might look at doing not squatting a two-legged squat at all. Maybe we're doing single-leg squats or we're doing rear foot elevated split squats, which if you heard me talk about before, not a super fan because they're hard. I am a super fan for the work that they do. I just can't do a lot of reps because I'm a little weaker and I really should be training at a different level from that. So I work on ground up split squats. But there's single leg activities, step ups, single leg deadlifts, single leg pushing exercises. All of that can help to train your body to single leg, to put more emphasis on those muscles and reduce the compensation, because you're going to have to go lighter if it's one leg versus two legs. Mike also really drives home, and Gray and Gary also drive it home, load a dysfunctional pattern. So if you can't do a squat, don't load that squat up. Work on the single leg training. Sprinting is for cheer athletes, absolutely should be a must. I used to not think it was important for my cheerleaders to do any sprint training. And then as I've gotten smarter over the years, and if you can go back and check out one of my prior podcasts, why sprinting is important to improve your jumps and to improve your takeoff for tunneling, to improve your load-ins for stunting, because you are accelerating, you're getting that plyometric work, you are training those muscles in short bursts, and you are leaning into it to really get into the glutes and hams. But you need a lot of control and you need a lot of mobility, and tendons and our joints need to be good to be able to do that. So for an adult, getting out and just going sprinting, if it's not something you've been doing and your joints are not used to it, that can be a recipe for disaster. So you have to know where you're at before you take yourself to where you want to be. We want to look at building athletes over time as an adult or a cheerleader, a high school athlete or a younger athlete. Build that sequencing over time, and the strength will come, the power will come, the mobility will come. All of that will go together. And then you just have to keep ebbing and flowing as you go and modifying or progressing as you're able to. Things we want to look at with single leg strength. How's it going to help for a flyer? Standing on one leg, obviously, going from an inverted position up into a standing position in a lib or a heel stretch, going from TikToks, from a left leg stretch to a right leg stretch. It's going to help on tumbling landings. So single leg, we're creating a little bit more strength and stability, and it's going to train our body to be able to land in that softer padding. So we're not just coming down and landing smack hard. It'll also help on the jump takeoffs. We have more, if we're able to strength train more. That strengthening doesn't mean that you're lifting more weight. It means that you're doing the exercise with mobility, with control, and you can gradually load it. And I've seen people do a single leg deadlift with a barbell or two kettlebells or two dumbbells. And maybe on a single leg, they're on a squat, they're doing 45 pounds. But if you have two 30 pounds or two 25 pounds dumbbells in each hand, or one in each hand, that's adding weight on, and which you might not be able to do if you didn't have the apparatus. There's a lot of ways that you can add load to this and create that stability. And I think these are very important for cheerleaders. So looking at building that single leg strength, as well as then getting into the sprint work to really progress the power and the speed and the explosiveness. That'll carry over just like with plyometric training. For adults and looking at single leg strength, we might look at stairs. Walking is the ultimate single leg. We transitioning from one foot to the other, and then working on balance. Now, I don't generally typically recommend that you're going to stand and just balance. I think that's a great test, but as an exercise, I'd rather look at you down on one knee and working on lifting the front knee up. Not to hold for a long period of time, but can you lift your toes? Can you lift your heels? And then can you lift your whole with maintaining the rib position, the hip position, and your whole alignment. Working and training this is going to help with developing power to be able to get up off the floor. And it's going to help with preventing falls, and it's going to help with creating a little bit more coordination for when you're out walking on uneven terrain. And it'll help keep us active as we age gracefully. Mike talked a lot about the RDL and a single leg deadlift, and RDL being a stiff legged deadlift that we're doing 2 legs, and a single leg deadlift is obviously on 1 leg. This is definitely an example of we want to make sure that we can move with good quality. The goal for holding the weight with either single leg or double leg is not touching the floor, not getting the weight to the floor, but can we own your hip hinge, get your hip back, and keep the shoulders square and your chin tucked and your leg long as you bend forward and come back up. Whether it's double leg or single leg, those cues are the same importance. We're going to own that before we load it more. One exercise that I found really interesting, Gray talked about, was doing in a different video. He talked about doing a windmill exercise. So you stand with your one arm overhead and the other arm down towards the floor. And so if my left knee is going to be bent, my left hand is down, my right arm is up. I'm going to work on that hip hinge by pushing my hip back to slide my hand down and aim for the right foot. So your feet are about hip distance apart. So you really get some hip hinging in that motion and some trunk rotation. It's a great exercise to work the balance and work that rotational pattern at the same time without actually adding load onto single leg deadlift that may be falling all over, or someone who's got tight hips is contributing to some of that knee pain. So there's a lot of ways that you can create variability in that. And once you get to that, you can do that motion, you can feel symmetrical on both sides and you're owning your breath. Then you can add load to it and grab the bell off the floor, hold the bell up overhead. So possibilities are endless. Just got to listen to your body and find out what it's telling you as you go. What is the connection between all of this? So all these experts, they use different language, but they're really all talking about the same thing. Whether it's David Weinstock from neurokinetic therapy, or Gary Ward from anatomy and motion, or Gray Cook, Lee Burton from functional movement systems, or Mike Boyle from Mike Boyle strength and conditioning, and whoever that it is in that you're talking about, they all have the same theme: create good mobility. Can you access the motion? Can you get your full hip extension? Can you control the motion? And can you build strength? And if we don't have that control, what do we need to do to put the patterns back into you so that you are moving easier with better control and less risk of injury? This goes right along with my own framework. We look at what are our movement options, what do we have available to us and what's missing, and how can we add that missing piece back in? What does our movement quality look like? So, it's shrugging their shoulders or closing their eyes to be able to control the motion. And then if they can do all that and can own it, not how far can we push them, but how can we challenge whatever exercises it might be to keep that stability and keep that mobility while building strength on top of good quality movement. So maybe instead of doing a squat, you're starting on the ground, working on a happy baby, and then flipping over onto your hands and knees and working on quadruped rock, working on keeping your pelvis and your back still so that you're not rounding your back as you're moving. Then maybe we come up onto half kneeling, and okay, this is where we start to lose it. We can get into position, or we can't quite control it. So maybe we go back down onto that quadruped position, all fours position, and we maintain our lower back. And then we add some challenge to it, maybe some bands and a bird dog, or maybe we'll crawl. Building the strength at that lower level to then come up and recheck on the half kneeling and see, okay, do we make a change? Because the higher up, just like with babies, you start off on the ground and you work the way up into standing and pushing from there. You're a coach, parent, trainer, or therapist, or just an active adult who wants to be able to move better, the process is the same. Look at finding the movement. Does the person have the ability to do the movement? Do they have the control of it? And then do they actually have the capacity to be able to do what we're asking them to do? They have the movement and the control. We're not starting off with just throwing them into their heaviest weight to PR. We want to make sure that they can progress that gradually and they can own that mobility and control through the entire process. So it's a recurring theme that we keep coming back to. Do they have the motion? Do they have the control? Great, let's build strength. Well, they lost the motion. We're going to go back and start again. Not necessarily in the same place. We might have to change how we're doing it some. And it may just keep building that. And gradually over time, you see incremental changes like up the step that things keep getting better. So Strength that's built on compensation will hit a ceiling. They're going to end up injured. They could potentially get through everything they want to, but eventually that compensation hits a ceiling and that strength is not going to keep progressing. What strength built on quality movement is built to last. And when we move well, we feel better, we get stronger, and everything just flows together. So I want to know from you, what do you think is missing from your movement? What do you think is missing from the people that you work with movement? What do you think people skip the most? Do you think it's their mobility routine, not stretching? Or do you feel like people stretch too much because they're trying to create mobility? And is that actually creating mobility? Are they lacking in their quality and that stability? Or are they lacking in their movement capacity? They have the available motion, they can control it with good form, without compensation, and they're just not strong enough. That will tell you where you're going to go as far as building your routine around and what you need to focus on and progressing from there. Please comment on my YouTube channel or send me a message in social media on Instagram and let me know what your thoughts are. If you like this and you want to learn more, next episode, we're going to talk about why mobility, strength, and stability are not actually separate things, but they're needed together. So we'll blend this a little bit more and talk about this all together. So be sure, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to this so you don't miss the episode. Hit the notification button because that'll tell you that it's available. And if this was helpful for you or for somebody that you know, please share it with them so that we can spread the message to make quality movement, quality control, and work to capacity and work to the appropriate capacity. I appreciate you listening, and definitely go check out the different podcasts if you want to learn some more. And if you are into this, please give me a follow. I appreciate you being here. Have a great day. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, yours aren't both our vibes. So go get the day.